Picture the night sky 5,000 years ago. Imagine it. No telescopes, no satellites, no light pollution, just you, a crackling campfire, and every single star screaming the same primal question. What in the world are we actually looking at up there? Fast forward to today, and we can confidently nod our heads, perhaps a little smugly, and explain, oh, that's just a 14-billion-year-old cosmos, steadily expanding at a crisp 70 kilometers per second per megaparsec. But let's hit rewind on that cosmic tape, way, way back. Because not so long ago, relatively speaking, the smartest minds on the planet were convinced the Earth was a flat dinner plate nestled under a solid crystalline dome. They believed planets were essentially tipsy gods, staggering aimlessly around us, and that a whole other planet, an elusive anti-Earth, was playing cosmic hide-and-seek right behind the sun. And they had the mathematics, the diagrams, even the university courses to back it up. The truth is, the history of human cosmology is essentially one glorious, often hilarious string of confident, beautifully illustrated, and almost entirely wrong answers. The very first consensus our species ever reached about the universe? Probably something along the lines of, well, it looks flat, so it must be flat. Makes sense, right? Early Mesopotamian scholars, for instance, envisioned their world as a flat, circular disk of land, gently floating on a vast, freshwater ocean. This terrestrial pancake was then capped by a solid, inverted bowl they called the firmament. And those twinkling stars we see, they were thought to be nothing more than tiny holes, poked by gods, allowing us mere mortals a fleeting glimpse into heaven's nightlight. The Egyptians painted an even more dramatic picture. They saw the sky as the magnificent goddess Nut, arching her star-studded body gracefully over her husband, the earth god Geb. Each night she'd dramatically swallow the sun, only to give birth to it again every single dawn. This cosmic drama perfectly explained the cycle of day and night. These models weren't just poetic. They actually for farming schedules, for religious rituals, and certainly for inspiring epic poetry. The only real snag in this flat-domed worldview? Every sailor who ever watched a ship slowly dip below the horizon, hull first, technically had to be hallucinating. But seriously, who were you going to trust back then? Your own eyes, or the wise, authoritative pronouncements of the local priest and the entire cultural narrative? Then, the Greeks arrived on the scene, essentially the original myth-busters of the ancient world. Anaximander gazed at that same firmament and suggested, that's a charming story. But what if the sky isn't a solid bowl at all? What if it's actually a gigantic wheel of fire, constantly surrounding us? He even calculated the Earth's radius. Wrong, but hey, points for trying. Then came Eratosthenes, a brilliant librarian who, armed with nothing more than sticks, shadows, and a sharp intellect, managed to calculate the Earth's circumference to an astonishing 2% accuracy. Suddenly, our comfy flat dinner plate transformed into a sphere. And the sky? Well, it was still teeming with gods, but now these divine beings weren't just flitting about. They were elegantly carried on a series of nested, translucent, crystalline spheres, fitting together like Russian dolls. Plato, with his love for perfect forms, naturally adored these perfect circles. Aristotle, ever the empiricist, valued observational evidence. Despite their different approaches, both agreed on one fundamental point. Earth absolutely belonged in the middle of everything. And just like that, we welcomed geocentrism, the Earth-centered theory that would reign supreme for 1,500 years. Why? Because frankly, it worked surprisingly well. With enough circles upon circles, known as epicycles, you could predict eclipses, track planetary movements, and even cast horoscopes with reasonable accuracy. The complexity wasn't seen as a flaw, it was a feature. The heavens, after all, were meant to be sophisticated, a divine clockwork of intricate design. Ptolemy of Alexandria, around 150 AD, really sealed the deal with his monumental work, Think of it as the IKEA manual of ancient astronomy, providing step-by-step instructions for understanding the cosmos. Had a problem? Like Mars, that notoriously wandering star, appearing to backtrack across the night sky? No worries. Just slap an epicycle, a small circle whose center moves along a larger orbit onto its path. Did Venus seem to hug the horizon in a peculiar way? Simply tweak the deferent, add an equant, maybe sacrifice a pigeon. Every new perplexing observation didn't break the model, it just meant another dial to turn, another gear to add. By the close of the Middle Ages, this geocentric model had become an incredibly complex contraption, requiring upwards of 70 distinct circles. Yet with all its adjustments, it still managed to predict planetary positions with surprising accuracy, often within a few degrees. You try doing that with your smartphone app offline. What made this system so incredibly resilient wasn't just its predictive power, it was its profound comfort. The Church absolutely loved it. With Earth firmly at the center, humanity was positioned at the apex of creation, and heaven itself lay just beyond the outermost celestial sphere. This cosmic order beautifully mirrored the social order here on Earth, and kings could literally sleep easier. Now, if we're handing out gold medals for sheer creative excess in cosmology, the prize absolutely has to go to the Pythagoreans. These ancient Greek philosophers weren't just mathematicians, they were a cult, utterly obsessed with the perfection of the number 10. For them, 10 represented completion, the tetractys, a divine sum. So, naturally, they insisted that reality to feature exactly 10 celestial bodies orbiting a central fire. Now, here's where it gets really clever. We couldn't see this central fire, they reasoned, because we lived on the far side of the Earth, which always faced away from it. And the 10th body? That was the mysterious counter-Earth, a planet perpetually hidden behind the sun, forever playing cosmic hide-and-seek. So, two entirely invisible objects, conveniently solving one philosophical craving for perfect numerical symmetry. No actual evidence, no problem at all. It's a testament to the power of a story that 2,000 years later we're still recycling this exact trope in our science fiction and comic books. Oh look, Planet X is hiding back there, just waiting to knock us off course. Of course, modern astronomy has meticulously mapped Lagrange points down to dust motes. There's definitely no planet-sized twin lurking unnoticed. But you just have to admire the audacity of it all, inventing an entire unseen world, complete with its own hidden sun, just to make the cosmic math a little bit prettier. Every single culture, it seems, had its own cosmic weirdness. Take the Norse, for instance. They believed the shimmering Milky Way was nothing less than the frothy spit from the mouth of the colossal wolf Fenrir. The Aztecs, on the other hand, had a far more visceral concern. They figured the sun required a daily diet of human hearts to keep shining, essentially like some grisly divine charcoal briquette needing constant refueling. And comets? Oh, they were never just dirty snowballs back then. These long-haired stars, as many called them, were seen as terrifying omens, portending everything from the murder of kings to the complete rewriting of dynasties. The Chinese, remarkably, kept meticulous records of every comet for over 2 millennia. Yet, even with all that observation, they still primarily called them broom stars, believing they swept away corruption or signaled upheaval. It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? Meticulous astronomical record-keeping and deeply ingrained superstition sharing the very same scroll. Only humans, it seems, can multitask like that, blending empirical observation with mythical interpretations. Fast forward to 1572. Imagine the collective gasp when a brand new, incredibly bright star suddenly blazed forth in the constellation Cassiopeia, stubbornly hanging around for a full 18 months. This was a supernova, a new star that challenged everything. Tycho Brahe, the eccentric Danish astronomer with a prosthetic nose and a pet moose, meticulously measured it. His shocking finding: this new star exhibited zero parallax, meaning it was unbelievably far away, way out past the moon, smack dab in what was supposed to be the perfect, immutable, unchangeable celestial sphere. Oops, this was a massive problem for the Ptolemaic system, which insisted the heavens were static. Under immense pressure, Tycho proposed a rather ingenious, face-saving hybrid, the Tychonic system. In his model, the planets orbit the sun, just as Copernicus suggested. But, and this was the crucial part, the sun orbited the Earth. It was a brilliant compromise. Everybody won, except perhaps pure logic. Yet, for a time, the Tychonic system was actually the best fit for the observational data, holding sway until telescopes became powerful enough to conclusively prove otherwise. It's a testament to its cleverness that even today, some modern flat-earthers inadvertently revive elements of it. If you strip away the orbiting planets, you're left with a stationary Earth, and everything else, including satellites whizzing above. So one small, politically expedient fudge for Tycho, but ultimately one giant regression for humankind's understanding of the cosmos. Then, in 1609, Galileo Galilei, a sharp-witted Italian polymath, did something truly audacious. He pointed a Dutch spyglass skyward, and just like that, the geocentric party came to a crashing halt. His observations were revolutionary, utterly dismantling centuries of dogma. He saw that Jupiter had its own retinue of moons, mini-planets, if you will, orbiting it, not Earth. This was a direct blow to the idea that everything revolved around us. He observed Venus going through phases, just like our moon, a phenomenon utterly impossible in a purely geocentric model. And the moon? Far from being a perfectly smooth, unblemished orb, it was rugged and mountainous. The sun, too, was imperfect, revealing dark blotches. The heavens, it turned out, weren't perfect at all. Within mere months, those elegant crystalline spheres shattered like crystal. But here's the thing, ideas, especially deeply ingrained ones, die far harder than even the most fragile spheres. The powerful Inquisition wasn't amused by Galileo's findings. They showed him the rather persuasive instruments of persuasion, and under duress he famously recanted his views. Science, for a time, was forced to limp on underground, while many universities stubbornly continued teaching Ptolemy's system for another century. It just goes to show. Scientific progress isn't a neat, straight line. It's much more like a long, often frustrating, drunk stagger, which, come to think of it, is rather fitting given those ancient wandering stars. And while we're on the subject of ancient, intricate, and ultimately wrong explanations, let's not overlook the entire medical universe people imagined inside our own bodies. For centuries, thanks to Hippocrates and later Galen, health was understood as a delicate balance of four fundamental humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Feeling sluggish and calm? Too much phlegm. Quick-tempered and easily angered? Must be an excess of yellow bile. And that melancholic, brooding mood? Definitely an overabundance of black bile. The treatments were often as colorful as the diagnoses: bloodletting with leeches, aggressive purging, or perhaps a change of diet. Maybe even listening to a symphony in the Dorian mode if you were particularly sensitive. The genius and the downfall of this humoral theory was its unassailable flexibility. Any symptom, any temperament, any illness could be neatly mapped onto this quartet. It was the same intellectual maneuver we saw with Epicycles. When your model doesn't quite fit, just add more variables, tweak a few dials, and declare victory. It wasn't until the groundbreaking discoveries of the 1800s, with the identification of bacteria and viruses, that we finally began to replace these imaginative humors with actual, verifiable causes of disease. The moral of the story, then, is a crucial one. Whenever a model or theory claims it can explain absolutely everything, it usually ends up explaining absolutely nothing at all. Speaking of things that just appear, let's talk about spontaneous generation, or what we might affectionately call maggot magic. The logic was simple, even intuitive. People genuinely believed that life could simply self-assemble from non-living matter. They'd see maggots seemingly pop out of rotting meat, or mice emerge from dirty hay and grain, and naturally conclude that the meat or hay itself had generated the life. It made sense to them. Where else would they come from? It took the meticulous experiments of Louis Pasteur, finally trapping microbes in his famous swan neck flasks, to definitively prove that life doesn't just spontaneously appear. Nothing spawns without parents. With that discovery, another universe of misunderstanding shrunk. The boundary between life and non-life became sharply defined, pushing the miracle of creation further and further back in time, first to the origins of microbes, then to complex chemistry, and ultimately to the very hearts of stars forging the carbon that makes life possible. Each one of these redefinitions, each scientific breakthrough, acts like a cosmic Copernicus, steadily shrinking humanity's tendency for special pleading, making us face the universe as it truly is. Now let's flip over to the mythological channel, because when it comes to explaining origins, humanity has consistently gravitated towards one particularly compelling image, the cosmic egg. You'll find the universe hatching from an egg in stories from Finland, India, Greece, even among the Navajo. In Hindu cosmology, for instance, there's the magnificent Hiranyagarbha, the golden womb, or golden egg, which floats in the primordial darkness for eons before finally splitting open, spilling forth the heavens and the earth. The Finnish myth describes a duck laying eggs on a primordial spirit's knee, which form the world when broken. The ancient Greeks had their Orphic egg, from which Phanes, the creator, emerged. Even among the Navajo, creation myths speak of worlds emerging from shell-like structures. It's a powerful, almost universal metaphor. And interestingly, even modern scientists, with all their equations and quantum mechanics, can't quite resist the allure of the imagery. The Big Bang, after all, is often described as a cosmic egg exploding into space-time. The key difference, of course, is that one is rooted in rigorous mathematics and empirical evidence, while the other is a metaphor born of deep cultural insight. Yet, the emotional punch is strikingly identical, the awe-inspiring idea of something magnificent emerging from nothingness, a grand beginning bursting forth from a seemingly fragile shell. Perhaps our brains are simply wired to picture origins as cracking containers because, for us, birth itself starts with the breaking of water, the emergence from an enclosed space. In this sense, culture truly copies biology, and our grand cosmologies often copy our most fundamental human experiences. Now, for a creation story that truly pushes the boundaries of what you might expect, leave it to the brilliant, often audacious theologians of the Nile. They managed to make the very genesis of the cosmos a decidedly PG-13 affair. According to their myths, the primordial god Atum, the great sun god, emerged from the watery chaos of none. But how does a lone supreme deity create the rest of the universe, particularly the first divine couple, when there's no one else around? Well, brace yourself. Atum did it by, and the ancient texts are remarkably explicit here, masturbating. The hieroglyphs literally state that he took his member in his hand, and so brought forth Shu and Tefnut, the gods of air and moisture, respectively. Talk about an original Big Bang. This myth, for all its eyebrow-raising details, actually solves a profound logical puzzle. How does a solitary, self-existent being initiate creation? The answer, for the Egyptians, was delightfully direct. You simply become your own date. It sounds utterly ridiculous, almost comically so, until you pause and consider that modern cosmology, in its own highly sophisticated way, performs a similar intellectual trick. The universe, we now believe, created space and time out of itself, expanding from a singularity with no external material or pre-existing void required. We've merely swapped divine bodily fluids for mind-bending inflation fields and quantum fluctuations. The underlying principle, however, of self-generation from within remains an uncanny echo across millennia. And then there are the Norse bards, with their epic, visceral vision of creation. They pictured the cosmos not as an egg, but as a truly ginormous cosmic chemistry experiment. In their mythology, at the very beginning, there was only the vast, empty void called Ginnungagap, flanked by two primordial realms. Muspelheim, the land of fire and searing heat, and Niflheim, the realm of ice and freezing mist. When the fiery breath of Muspelheim met the icy rivers of Niflheim in that great chasm, the meltwater dripped and coalesced, giving birth to the first living being, the colossal frost giant, Ymir. Ymir was eventually slain by the first gods, Odin, Vili, and Ve, who then proceeded to build the entire world from his hacked-up body. His blood became the vast oceans, his flesh the land, his bones the mountains, and his enormous skull? That became the very dome of the sky, held aloft by 4 dwarfs. It's basically the most metal, most epic IKEA tutorial for world building ever conceived. Of course, modern science tells us Earth accreted from countless colliding planetesimals, a process of immense violence and chaos. But the emotional truth of both narratives is strikingly similar. Creation is often violent, incredibly messy, and leaves its body parts everywhere. We modern humans, for instance, carry in our very bones the calcium forged in the hearts of exploded stars. Ymir, in his colossal skull, carries the wild, heroic dreams of the Vikings. So really, pick your poet. Both tell a powerful story of cosmic origins. So, what's the recurring pattern we keep seeing here? It's this: every single one of these crazy models, no matter how outlandish they seem to us now, perfectly explained what people could observe with the limited tools and perspectives they had available. A flat Earth, it perfectly fit a walkable, visible horizon. Geocentrism, it flawlessly accounted for the apparent daily spin of the sky and the sun's journey. Those intricate epicycles, they managed to predict naked-eye planetary positions with remarkable precision, often within a single degree. And the counter-Earth, it beautifully satisfied a philosopher's deep-seated craving for numerical symmetry and perfection. These ideas, while ultimately wrong, were internally consistent, often mathematically elegant, and provided a comforting sense of order to a bewildering universe. As the saying goes, science advances one funeral at a time, not because older scientists are stupid, but because they are deeply, personally, and intellectually invested in the paradigms they helped build. It speaks to a fundamental aspect of human cognition. The same evolutionary wiring that makes us incredibly adept at spotting a tiger camouflaged in rustling bushes also compels us to find patterns in the movements of planets, even if those patterns aren't actually there. We crave order, and if we can't find it, we'll invent it. Now, before we get too smug about all our scientific advancements, let's have a little modern hubris check. Because right now, we too are sailing on a vast, mysterious sea of unknown dark stuff. Consider this. Roughly 95% of the entire cosmos is made up of what we call dark matter and dark energy, which, let's be honest, are just fancy placeholder terms, for we haven't the foggiest clue what this stuff actually is. It's entirely possible that in the year 2323, our descendants will look back at our current scientific theories, our multiverses, our string theory, our absolute conviction that time began precisely at t=0, and have a good hearty laugh, much like we're laughing at epicycles. The crucial difference, however, is our pace of discovery and our willingness to update our understanding. It took 100 years to shift from Ptolemy's geocentrism to Copernicus's heliocentrism. Another 100 years to Newton's universal laws, another 100 to Einstein's relativity. Then a mere 20 years from Hubble's expanding universe to the Big Bang model. And then a blistering 9 years from the theoretical prediction of gravitational waves to their actual detection. This exponential acceleration of discovery demands an exponential humility. Linear certainty, it turns out, is a fool's errand. We are constantly learning, constantly revising, and constantly admitting what we don't know. So, out of all these incredible, often bewildering ancient ideas, which one completely blows your mind the most? Seriously, drop a comment below and let me know. Would you rather take up residence on the hidden counter-Earth, or maybe somewhere cozy on Ymir's eyebrow? If Epicycles ever made you feel a pang of cosmic frustration, then go ahead and smash that like button. And for many more fascinating trips down the cosmic rabbit hole every single week, make sure you hit subscribe. From flat disks held under solid domes to the mind-bending quantum foam and curved space-time, every single one of these crazy beliefs was, at one point, the absolute best show in town. Our ancestors weren't idiots, not by a long shot. They were the earliest, most dedicated beta testers of reality. Each wrong answer they proposed wasn't a failure, but a crucial step, trimming down the vast, bewildering possibility space until the data finally screamed heliocentrism loud enough, germs loud enough, expanding universe loud enough for us to hear. In a very real sense, Our ancestors' beautiful, imaginative, and often mistaken failures are the very stepping stones we now confidently orbit on. So the next time you glance up at the majestic constellation of Orion, or just gaze at the moon, take a moment to remember this. Every star you see is a silent monument to 1,000 discarded ideas. And every single discarded idea is a vigilant guardian of the tiny, hard-won patch of knowledge we now stand upon. Keep looking up, keep questioning everything, and always keep a generous slice of humility handy. Because the cosmos, my friends, still has a few truly mind-blowing surprises up its sleeve, and we are probably blissfully and hilariously wrong about at least half of them.